Welcome aboard. I'm your pilot wannabe again for this flight, Papa Whiskey Bravo, or you can just call me Papa if that's easier. Today we're going to do, as promised, the first leg of the Lower 48 Capital Cities tour. I don't know, I'm going to have to work on condensing that name, I guess. Anyway, we're here at the biggest airport in probably the whole state of Indiana. It's in Indianapolis. And we're going to be flying up to semi-scenic Lansing, Michigan. But we'll talk more about that in the briefing. I'll see you in a minute. Okay, back in skyvector.com. We're going to be departing from KIND, which, spells kind. I suppose it's a fairly kind airport. I mean, it's, the times I've been there, just, dropping people off and picking people up for flights, it's seemed relatively low-key and pleasant. I mean, certainly more so than the Chicago airports, Midway and O'Hare, where they're, a little more bustling. But at any rate, we'll be leaving IND. And I've got a few waypoints plugged in, 3 waypoints plugged in. And going up to Capital Region International in Lansing, Michigan. I suppose maybe we'll take a quick look at the information page for that one while we're here. Got an elevation of 860 feet above sea level, so if I'm going into a pattern, I'll be rounding down to 1,800 feet when I go into the pattern. And down here, well, let's see, control tower. Yes, it does have a control tower. Maybe we'll actually use the InSim ATC, let them pick a runway for us. If you remember last time, we talked about this spot right here was ASOS, which gave us the weather. This is the another one. There's like 3 different letter combinations here. I have looked them up in the past. I don't remember what they stand for now. But ATIS is a very common one, ATIS. So let's try to remember that the ATIS frequency is 119.75. Seems like most people just ignore the first one and say 19.75. So let's try to remember 19.75. We'll see if I actually remember. I'll probably have to refer back to this, but yeah, 19.75. There's a couple of runways. 3 different runways. 3 runways. Looks like the smallest of them is 3,600 feet long. And we've got one that's 5,000 feet long and 8,500 feet long. The plane we're flying today, I believe, only needs about 2,000 feet to land. So any of those will work out. Once we figure out what the weather is, because we are on live weather today. Once we figure out what the weather is, we'll see what runway they give us. Anyway, I guess that's all for the flight plan. I always have a hard time with that. Get my words mixed up, or my merds mixed up when I say that. But I guess that's it for the flight plan. We'll head on down to the ramp and have a look at the plane today. All right. See you in a minute. All right, here we are on the ground at Indianapolis International, and time to reveal today's airplane. Now, unless you paid a lot of attention or are really familiar with Diamond aircraft, you might think this is another DA-62 just with a different paint job, but no, this is the DA-42. It's an add-on aircraft that was made by a developer named Cows. Yes, like moo cows. It actually stands for Creators of Worlds, but they do kind of make fun of themselves, and well, for instance, there's some stitching on the seats inside where it should say Diamond Aircraft or whatever, Industries or whatever it says. It's a very artsy aerodynamic picture of a cow. So we'll show you that when we get inside. But this model, and you know, in real life, the DA62 and the DA42 are similar. The DA42 is a little smaller, carries fewer people, carries less weight, but they have a similar, I believe, a similar range and speed, with the DA62 maybe being a little faster and longer range. But the DA42 here is just a 4-seater, where the DA62 is theoretically a 7-seater, although 6 is probably more realistic. But as far as the models in the simulator, the DA42 is far superior. It has a lot of systems depth. It's approaching what someone might call a study level aircraft, but we'll get into that when we fire it up. My plan today for the flight is to, besides talking about this plane some and maybe talking about the G1000 glass cockpit displays inside, because this will look inside. It looks very, very similar to the DA62. My plan, though, is to maybe also tell you guys what kind of hardware I have, what peripherals I have. I've taken a couple, 3 pictures of my setup that I'm going to try to load as stills when the time comes, and I'll also try to leave links to everything I've got in the video description. Although for the honeycomb alpha yoke and honeycomb bravo throttle quadrant, I don't know that leaving a link is going to be all that helpful, because they're having some business issues. Like, the 2 owners weren't getting along, and last I knew they weren't shipping anything, and that's why I didn't try to send in my Bravo unit to get one with the 7 toggle switches arranged the right way. I'll point that out when we look at the picture. Anyway, but yeah, this has been my current favorite plane in the simulator. I was gonna show you guys all of the planes that I've spent the most time in, but instead of starting, like I started with the DA62 because it was the first plane I spent a lot of time in, and instead of going to the next plane that I spent a lot of time in, I skipped all the way to the end to get this one in. And again, I made this choice because I'm lazy, and my current control scheme, both the control, what do you call it, profile, the control profile in the sim, it works on both planes, and then my physical setup where I'm using the stick instead of the yoke works, and then I've got throttle handles on the quadrant that mimic the throttle handles in the 62 or the DA42. And so, as opposed to switching everything around, just to switch it all back around again, a few videos later, I figured we'd skip right to the 42. And I actually also have the DA50 RG, which is an interesting plane. I haven't spent a lot of time in it, but it's interesting. We might hit that for a brief video while I've still got this same control setup before we move on to other stuff. Anyway, but I think it's for my money, even slightly, sexier looking plane than the DA62, and it has much better visibility from the inside. The doors actually open on this one, so should make getting in a lot easier, or at least less magical looking. Some of the high fidelity planes that come out for the sim just a couple of them at least have, well, three off the top of my head, have a walk around pre-flight thing you can do. This one does not, unfortunately. All the system depth is post pre-flight, I guess you could say. It's all once you're inside and ready to fire up. But yeah, I'm thinking that my cursor won't trigger these doors like this. Let me see. Yeah, they don't open from the outside. So through the magic of editing, um, we'll fix this. Just hold on for a moment. All right, you may have noticed it got quieter. That's because as far as the simulator is concerned, I'm still inside the plane. I'll explain that in a minute. But now I can open this back door and look, the sound comes back because now it thinks I'm inside the plane and I've opened the door. So here's where your rear seat passengers get in and where you store your luggage. Well, some of your luggage. There's a front luggage compartment too, although I don't believe it's really modeled. I know the door isn't modeled. You can't open the door or anything. But here's where the pilot and co-pilot get in. This big canopy. Before we get in, we'll go ahead and close the passenger door because we don't need it. No backseat passengers today. And we'll pretend we're settling down in here, and poof, we are in the plane. If it's hot outside, which, let's see, it probably is fairly hot outside. If it's hot outside, I will typically leave the canopy open while I'm starting it up, although I've never done that while trying to record a video, so I'm really not sure how loud it might end up being. So I might go ahead and close the canopy before we do that. I looked up the weather. It's not that hot. Anyway, it's 23.3 degrees Celsius, which if you're, American like me, that probably doesn't really mean anything. I've gotten a little bit used to it, Celsius, thanks to a rhyme that I heard, which was, let's see, 30 is hot, 20 is nice, 10 is cold, and 0 is ice. So yeah, if 20 is nice, 23 degrees is probably still pretty nice. So yeah, we'll probably go by. It does have little storm windows here that open. I don't know why they call them storm windows. That's probably a British thing. I watch a lot of YouTubers that are, flight sim YouTubers that are British. So I don't know. To me, it's a vent window, which is more like an old car arrangement. But I should point out, you know what? I'm going to pop the hatch again real quick. Check out the wear and tear they modeled on the propeller blade. All that, chopping up bugs, on the propeller blade. I mean, it's a relatively shiny, new-looking plane, but just a bit of wear on it. I guess some people have complained about the baked-on wear appearance, but I think the plane looks great myself. Anyway, let's see. Been a while since I've been in this plane because I've been trying to learn how to edit videos, and the last plane I flew was the 62, which was pretty dumb. Where this one is a lot more involved. So there's some things I should check first. I don't have a checklist of my own on this one. There's a checklist built into the G1000, which when I first found that out, I thought that was something that the developer did, and it wasn't a real thing. It wasn't something that was in real life. And then I happened to watch a video of a real pilot flying a real TA-42, and lo and behold, the checklist does appear in here. But there are a few things you should do before you actually turn on the power to see that checklist. And it's just a couple of things. I mean, obviously in real life, you do the whole pre-flight outside the plane, and there's all manner of things you would be doing. We'll talk about that on some plane that actually has the pre-flight modeled. But first thing you should do is make sure all the switches that should be off are off. So all the lights are off. The pitot heat, the electric master, both engine masters, the avionics master all off. Fuel pumps left and right both off. Landing gear switch down. Always important to make sure that the landing gear switch is down. This plane, pause here to say this. This plane, one of the settings that you can turn on or off is a save state or persistent state, meaning that if the last thing I do in the plane is flip the landing gear switch up and one of the fuel pump switches up, and then I quit out of the simulator, when I come back and get back in this plane, those switches will be that way. So if I forget or do something wrong, it'll be wrong then when I start again. So you really have to run through the checklist in this plane when you have that setting turned on, and that's one of the things I like about it. I have a hard time running the checklist on a plane that will always start in default condition. It just seems, after the first time or two, you run through the checklist and nothing's ever going to change, nothing's going to be in the wrong spot. It's hard to continue doing the checklist. But on a plane that something could be wrong, it's a lot more fun. Also, all of the circuit breakers are modeled and not just so you can pull them out and make a nice little satisfying clicky noise. They actually will kill the system they're connected to. If I pull the circuit breaker for the flaps, the flaps will not work. And that's true of all of these other circuit breakers. So very cool. Okay, and the next thing, we checked the switches. So we're going to just, now that we went across the panel, we're going to go down the center area here. This is the rudder trim. Rudder trim and elevator trim, and some planes also have aileron trim, although this one does not. We're going to talk about trim on another time. We're going to have enough to talk about on this video. We'll get into how the trim works at a later time. Next thing, parking brake. Yes, parking brake is locked. Make sure my switch corresponds to that. Parking brake. Throttles are idle. Fuel switches are on, and the little locks are engaged. The locks pop back automatically, and see, they just popped back automatically. I have no idea in the real plane how that works. I would suspect if they are automatic, it's more like a spring-loaded thing, so that when you slide it, forward, it probably automatically pops back right away. Who knows? But in the simulated plane here, it pops automatically after a delay. The elevator trim seems to be about where I left it. Doesn't really matter where I put it now, because I'm going to be testing things that will throw it completely out of whack. It's something that we'll have to put back where we want it very shortly before we take off. And the last two switches are hard to see down here. These are transfer switches for moving fuel from the auxiliary tanks into the main tanks. Okay, and speaking of fuel, another thing I like to do before firing up is go to the weight and balance page in the sim here. You can go to the, sometimes it comes up with all these undefined fives. It's a glitch. Just bring it up again, and it's fine. You can go to the weight and balance page from where you choose what plane you want to fly in the world map, but there's sometimes you can do things like if you go to the weight and balance page and pick everything the way you want it, and then you go back and you change what airport you're starting at, lots of times it'll zero it back out. And so I like to wait and go to the weight and balance page till I'm actually in the sim. Then I know it won't change. Now see, this is where I left the fuel last time I flew the plane. These are the two main tanks and the two auxiliaries sitting at 50%. 195 pounds is what I have chosen for myself. Usually, if it's a plane that just loads in default, it'll put me on a diet and make the pilot 170 pounds. I haven't been 170 pounds in a long time, So 195 is a little more realistic. I'm going for a co-pilot today. My preferred co-pilot person, or at least the person that would be riding in this seat, is not 170 pounds, but she usually has 20 or 30 pounds of crap with her. So yeah, so that's why we leave that there. And then rear baggage, I figure we get a little baggage in there. I mean, we're about to go on a cross-country flight to end all cross-country flights, flying from one capital city to another for all of the lower 48 states. That being said, I feel like 65 pounds of baggage and 25 pounds of baggage and 50 pounds of baggage spread out is not a lot, We've got 39 pounds of de-ice fluid in the plane. The plane is rated to go into known icing conditions. It will get into de-icing at another time. It's not going to be an issue on this flight. So I'm pretty happy with how everything is set there. We don't need anywhere near this much fuel for the flight we're going on. So that all looks good. Now I think we're ready to turn on the power. This is the main battery switch, but I've got it on my on one of my honeycomb units, so that's what we're going to go for now. That makes a nice sound. It just fires up and sounds like things are happening. All right, see how the screens came on with the main battery, whereas on the DA62 I had to turn on the avionics master to get the screens to come on. That's not right, because you're supposed to be able to see the engine page before you start the engines. You're supposed to start the engines before turning on the avionics master, so you don't fry it out or blow the circuit breaker or anything like that. Another big difference, I didn't show you in the DA62, but in the DA62, when you hit this engine button right here, it just changes the information that you get here a little bit. But in this plane, when you hit the engine button, you get a whole engine page, which is great. And it's got the fuel totalizer here, which is probably still accurate to the amount of fuel I have. It says I've got 46.4 gallons, and I've used 30 since the last time I reset it. Let's see, 46.4. We'll do a little quick math here. 16, 16, 32 plus 12 for 2, 44-ish, and then the change probably comes out to, 46.4. So yeah, yep, nice. Yeah, the fuel system's modeled so well on this plane that I thought it was working wrong, and I got on the developers Discord and talked about it, and a guy on there had to straighten me out about how the real plane works. But maybe we'll talk about that. Maybe we won't. I'm sure I'm going to make more than one flight with this plane. Anyway, I was talking about the checklist is on here. So yeah, let's get into the checklist. Big old page here where you accept the terms, and this isn't real, and don't use it for real information. Real instructional for legitimate actual aviation. And I feel the same way. Don't use anything I say or do. For any sort of real instruction for actual flying. Okay. Let's see, group. We want off through user agreement, normal operating procedures. You move around with this little knob here. Normal operating procedures, enter. Check before engine start, enter. So electric master, we've turned that on, so we hit check. Battery voltage. Let's go back to the engine page. Battery voltage 25.4, 25.4. Sounds good. Back to the engine page. Check. Rudder pedals adjusted. In the real plane, the seats do not slide forward and backward. The seat backs are adjustable, but the bottom, the seat butts, they're anchored to the plane for safety. They don't move. But the rudder pedals electrically will move fore and aft to get them into the right position for you to operate the plane if you're short like me or tall like someone else. Obviously, that's not modeled in here. Rudder pedals, flight controls. You're supposed to check and make sure the flight controls all work. Now, we didn't do this with the DA62 because the DA62 is a magic airplane that that nothing will ever go wrong. So, flight controls. Let's pop the canopy open again. We're getting a warning that the door is open. Understood. We're gonna check our aileron out here. Make sure, yep, down, up. We're gonna look over here at this one while we get blinded by the sun. Down, up. This is easier to do when the co-pilot's not here. Yeah. Oh, we'll talk about this real quick. The seat belts are click spots, if you notice, and it's 3 position click spots. The first click, I just now clicked it, makes it to where the co-pilot is now visible from outside of the plane. Supposed to be. Oh, you know what? I was in the wrong. Yeah, there's the co-pilot now visible from the outside of the plane. And another click makes the co-pilot visible inside of the plane, which is very cool. And then the pilot one does the same thing. Let's see. See right now, the pilot not visible. If I give it 1 click, I'll be visible from the outside. That's not what I look like. I've probably never really looked like that. If you click it again, I'm visible from the inside, but then I'm looking out of my own face, which is, in a word, disturbing. So I don't really do that very often. Now I gotta find the click spot again. Oh, where'd it go? Where'd it go? Where'd it go? And that makes him invisible. Now visible from the outside. Okay, anyway, where were we? Oh yeah, we were checking the flight controls. Let's see, we checked the ailerons. Now we're gonna stick our head out through the door. And we're gonna check the, yeah, elevator's looking good. And rudder's swinging around, so that all looks good. Pull the canopy back down again. And zoom back in on this. Flight controls are good. Trim, we're only going to worry about making sure the rudder trim is centered, because like I said, we're going to be doing tests that's going to send the elevator trim all out of whack anyway. So trim's good. Gear warning light and fire detector. This is a test button to test those things. Yeah, we're getting fire warning and the unsafe gear light coming on. Yeah, okay. De-ice, again, we're not going to be worried about ice. So anything to do with the de-ice system, I'm going to skip. Whoops, flaps, full travel, landing, yeah, okay, flaps. And we're going to look over here. I'm going to put it to the first stage of flaps where the takeoff and landing, or I'm sorry, yeah, takeoff flaps. And I'm going to look over here, make sure it's down, and then I'm going to go for full landing flaps. Guess what I was trying to say before was takeoff and approach. Yeah, full landing flaps. Now, I don't put the flaps right back up right away because I feel like we're drawing all our power directly off the battery right now, and I don't want to kill the battery, so I'll put the flaps up after we got the engine started. So, variable elevator stop. This is an interesting one. This plane has a lot of safety features, and it's almost reminiscent of like electronic stability control and traction control in a car, except it's related to aerodynamics. But one of the things is if you run the elevator trim all the way nose up, see how it's moving the stick there? If you run the elevator trim all the way nose up and you pull the stick all the way back and then you go full throttle, it will automatically force the stick back forward again because it knows that you're trying to like stall the airplane. So that's a test to make sure that all that stuff actually works. See what I mean about the trim? It would have been pointless to set the trim just where you want it, only to go and screw with it again. Because there's another test. When you test the autopilot, it's going to screw with the trim also. Okay, variable elevator stop. Passengers. She seems fine. Okay. Instructed. Yeah, passengers instructed. Yeah, this particular passenger here in the sim, she doesn't really listen to me anyway. Seat belts, sure, we're wearing our seat belts. The rear door is closed. We closed that before we got in. Front canopy is now closed. MFD, that's this screen. This is the PFD, the pilot's flight display, I believe it stands for. And then this is the MFD, the multi-function display. MFD, you're supposed to look at the engine page and your fuel, and you're supposed to check fuel quantity and fuel temperature, because the fuel can't be too cold or the plane won't start, because this plane and the DA-62 and the 50, I think all of Diamond's line currently run on Jet A, which it might surprise some of you to know that jet fuel is actually almost exactly the same thing as diesel fuel. So these engines are actually much more similar to diesel car engines, turbocharged diesel car engines, than they are to your typical light piston airplane engines. And diesel, if it gets too cold, diesel and Jet A, if they get too cold, they turn into jello and don't flow through filters and stuff very well. Anyway, oh look, we're drawing too much power. It's already bringing the DC voltage down. Where were we? Our fuel, and we needed to know our fuel temperatures. I know the fuel temp, it's plenty in the green. It's not cold out, so. Total time in service. Now we'll see how much I've been flying this plane. I have flown this plane for 25.2 hours. If in real life you'd have some sort of a logbook where you're supposed to be noting these things. Total time in service, MFD back on the engine system page to look at the de-ice fluid, and we don't care about that. Start key is inserted. You can't remove it. It's always inserted. In the real plane, I imagine you can remove it, but, not here. Power levels idle. Double checking with my hardware. They are idle. Yeah, volts are getting low. I don't know what happens if they get all the way low. Strobe light. See, I told you. It tells you to turn the strobe light on. I'm going to do that with my hardware. Strobe light. We better get an engine started. Yeah, this is all for starting the engine. I'm just going to get an engine started before we kill the batteries and have to figure out how to jump start it. So we're going to turn the left engine master on with my hardware, and then we're going to wait for the glow plug light to go out because it's a diesel, and then I'm going to hold the brakes while I start the left engine. Okay, left engine started up. We should have no trouble with power anymore. And hopefully the airplane isn't too loud for you guys. Looking at my meters here, might bring the engine noise down a smidge here, or not engine noise, but the sim volume down a smidge, just to be on the safe side. There's a way I can make it even quieter. I'll show you after I get the other engine started. But just to show you, I was doing the right thing here. I was supposed to immediately after engine start check for oil pressure, which I glanced at it and it's fine. Volts and amps, I was looking at that pretty closely. If external power was used, an external power pack, which it was not, disconnect, and then you're supposed to repeat the whole thing for the right engine, which we will. But now we're going to pop this over to the next checklist, and now we're going to look at the engine page while we start the right engine. All right, right engine master on, and starting the right engine. Oh, I forgot to wait for the glow plug to go out. That's okay this time. It's not that cold out. If it was winter time, you'd probably damage the engine, or it just plain wouldn't start. The glow plugs are little heaters in each cylinder head that sort of warm things up and get the engines ready to run. Okay. Something interesting of note here, since this is a more realistic model of a plane. The temperatures don't go right up to into the green. It takes a few minutes for them to warm up to operating temperature, just like real life, versus like the stock DA-62 we're in, that seconds after it's started, it's at operating temperature. It's just not very realistic. We're going to turn on the avionics master with my physical switch. That'll clear up this junk here, and also the G1000 is going to talk to us a minute in a female voice and tell us this TAWS test is good. I mean, I'm assuming it's going to say it's good. This plane does have random failures. Every hour, there's a 5% chance some system will fail. I have had a system fail. It wasn't an important system. It didn't slow me down, but it's interesting. But any minute she'll say, TAWS test active, or something. I don't know what she's going to say, but TAWS is about terrain avoidance system or something like that.
TAWS system test okay.
There you go. TAWS system test okay. The chick says so. All right, now just in case it's too noisy, which I can make it noisier if I open a window. Let's see. You can hear the engine noise much better that way. But since I don't know how the balance is really going to work out, we're going to do another neat little thing here with a hidden click spot. In the real plane, this is where you plug in your headsets and whatnot. And it's a click spot that gives you the impression you just put on noise-canceling headset. So, there. It's even got that little hiss background sound. So just to make sure that you guys can hear me okay, we'll run with that on. Maybe we'll turn it off once in a while just to hear things, but we'll run with that on for now. I guess we should get back to the checklist. All right. Turn the engine page back off. If I can get my mouse to settle down. Oil pressures are looking perfect. Oil temps are coming up. Coolant temp is coming up. Let's see, there's a gearbox temp. That's another thing. These engines, power goes through a gearbox before going to the propellers, which is also a fairly uncommon thing from what I gather for light, GA planes. Let's see, gearbox. Gearbox is coming up also. Okay, so oil pressure's good. The RPM is currently 710, which is 710 plus or minus 30. Fuel pumps are off. Yep, there they are. They're off. Fuel selector safeguards. We were talking about those earlier. Oh yeah, fuel selectors on crossfeed. Okay. Right now the fuel selectors are on. It wants us to switch them to crossfeed. I'm guessing that it wants us to switch them to crossfeed to test and make sure the crossfeed is working. And in case you are new to how their typical twin GA planes work, the left engine will draw fuel out of the tank in the left wing, and obviously the right will draw out of the right wing. Crossfeed makes them feed from the opposite wings. I have not been told specifically why that's available to you. I gather it's so that if you end up with some sort of a fuel imbalance, because you don't want a whole bunch of weight on one of your wings and fuel versus the other, because then it'll make it hard to make the plane fly straight and keep the wings level. So if you get some sort of a fuel imbalance, then you can crossfeed and even things out. And I would imagine if you have an engine out situation and you can't restart the engine and you need to fly for a good length of time, maybe you're over water and you want to fly a good length of time to get somewhere to land on your one engine, you're going to be drawing too much fuel, too much weight out of the one wing, and you'll want to switch over to crossfeed at some point. So that's my guess as to why you crossfeed. Fuel selectors crossfeed, check. Pitot heat annunciator. Okay, so I've got a warning that the stall heat and pitot heat, which it's only marked as pitot heat, but it controls the stall heat too. It's actually more complicated than that. We'll get into that in a minute. The checklist wants me to turn on the pitot heat briefly to make sure that this annunciator goes away. So I'm doing it with my hardware, and the annunciator went away. Turning it back off, annunciator comes back. I'll make it not beep at us. All right, pitot heat annunciator check. Pitot heat back off. Avionics master on. Yeah, I got ahead of myself on that. That's okay. Weather radar F installed on. Yeah, there's weather you can get in the G1000, so I assume it's just on. FMS setup. What they mean here is, I'm assuming that means flight management system. This is the point at which the checklist wants you to input your course, your flight plan, I should say. So we're going to exit out of the checklist, and we're going to put in the flight plan. Although, like I said in the previous flight, the G1000 stuff is very duplicated here, and I could hit the flight plan button on this side, and I could input the flight plan here. But I don't know. I feel like in real life I'd probably find it easier to do it over here, and then I'll end up just looking at it over there. But here's where we put in the origin, the waypoints, and the destination. I'm going to show you how this works, and then I'll probably pause it and essentially edit out me spinning this little dial to input all of the information. So I'll just show you how the first one works here. See, it starts with a K, which is handy because a lot of the big most of the airports of any size in the United States anyway start with a K. There's a way to do this with the keyboard. If I hit this little button here, it sometimes I usually have to hit it 2 or 3 times, and it'll come up with the big Xbox keyboard in my face, and I can just punch in KIND, and it's all happy. Except there's a glitch, of course, where about, 1 out of 5 times, when I hit the enter button after typing in the information, when I hit the enter button, it shuts everything off in the plane, and I have to restart the engines and turn everything back on. It's really annoying. And so if I ever have to do this while I'm flying, I definitely always input everything with the knobs here. See, the big part of the knob moves the cursor, and the little part of the knob gets you to the letter you want. KIND. Almost to the end. And D, you can see why now I'm going to edit out this because yeah, it's already not interesting. I hit that. Oh, it's know what runway. Let's see. I'm expecting them to give me 23 right. We'll see if that is correct. So I turn the knob here until I find the runway that I'm using. We'll see if it's right. 23 right. Enter. Then I usually, because I learned how to do all this on a much older version of this kind of stuff, the Garmin 530, I tend to skip to the destination next, and then I go back and put the waypoints in the middle. I don't have to on here. I don't know why I still do it, but I do. But same thing, you go here, and as you turn it, you get a K, and we're going to KLAN, I believe. And I just want to point out this time, I'll edit it out after this. KLA, the A is always nice and easy. KLAN, and see, it tells you where you're going. Lansing, Michigan, Capital Region International. It tells you the bearing from here, the distance from here, and the GPS, or not GPS coordinates. Well, yeah, I guess it is. Latitude and longitude. Anyway. And then, since we have no idea what runway they're going to give us there, we're just going to stick with none and hit enter again. Now, I'm going to go ahead and edit out putting in the 3 waypoints because, yeah, tedious. Okay. See you in a minute. Okay, I'm back. And I said I was going to stop starting everything with OK. I'll figure out something. Anyway, I want to show that I've got the last one input here. So we're starting origin kind. Runway 23 right. En route, we're hitting MIE, FWA, MODM. By the way, these two are a type of radio navigation fix that's called a VOR. At least I'm pretty sure they're both VORs. VORs we're going to get into at a later time in a different plane. I haven't really tried to navigate with VORs, which is an older style of navigation. I haven't really tried to navigate with VORs with the G1000. It seems like it's easier to understand in an older plane with round gauges, or what they call steam gauges with needles and things. Anyway, I digress. So our three waypoints, and then our destination, Kilo Lima Alpha November. Okay, so that's the flight plan, and now it will pop up a larger version over here when I hit flight plan, and I usually just kind of watch that tick away. And there's more stuff you can do down here that we'll probably get into. Anyway, let's zoom in a little here. Yeah, I'm expecting them to take us right around here to runway 23, right, but we'll find out. let's get back to the checklist. Okay, all of that was just to check this off, FMS setup. Check. Autopilot test. This is the other one that's going to screw up the trim. All right, so here's all your autopilot buttons. I'll do this with the mouse instead of my hardware. So, because all of these are just buttons, not toggle switches, it won't mess me up to use the mouse. And then these are the buttons for the autopilot, and then what the autopilot is up to will be displayed in these black rectangular boxes up here. So we're going to turn the autopilot on, and it turns on the yaw damper right away, and roll control. We're going to center up the heading bug. We talked about that a little bit last time. If you click if you're using a mouse and keyboard, or at least a mouse, if you click and hold the left button and then click the right button, it's the same as if you were physically sitting in the cockpit and you push this heading knob in, because it's a button, and it centers up your heading bug. So I centered up the heading bug. I'm going to switch the autopilot to heading, and then I'm going to back up and I'm going to look at the stick while I turn the knob, the heading knob, and look how it turns the stick. This is my experience, again, only with GA planes. I don't do airliners and you know, any kind of bigger jets and things. In my experience, I think this might be the only plane. There's maybe one other plane that the autopilot actually you can test it like this on the ground. It's just not usually modeled in the simulator, so that's very cool. And then also we can hit vertical speed, and just so you can see what it's doing here, we'll hit vertical speed. I can't really see it from here. I'm going to use my hardware. Sorry, there's dogs barking in the background. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but we're going to go. See, it doesn't really respond to down very much, but if we go up, it should move the stick up. It's not really moving the stick up. Oh, but it did bury the trim forward when I pushed it to the down. So yeah, the autopilot basically works. Now we're going to turn the autopilot off, and we're going to turn, that warning was because you turned the autopilot off, and we're going to turn the yaw damper off, and we're going to get rid of the flight director. The flight director is what keeps this stuff kind of active, like ready to go when you turn the autopilot on, and also gives you the magenta indication of where it thinks you should be flying. But we're going to get rid of that for now, and we're going to get the elevator trim back where we want it, which I like taking off with just about, so you're supposed to put it right dead center for takeoff. I like it click nose up, just one click nose up. Makes me happy. The plane just kind of wants to fly about the time you reach the rotate speed. Okay, we test the autopilot. Floodlight is the light under the dash. I'm not going to bother with that testing that right now. Position lights on as required. That's position lights is another term for nav lights in other planes. So we're going to turn on the nav lights. We're going to go ahead and turn on the taxi lights. Then it says fuel selectors back to on from crossfeed. I typically, because of the checklist on another plane that I used to fly all the time, I typically leave them on crossfeed all the way through the check right before you take off, the run-up. I usually leave it on through the run-up, and then I switch it back. So we're just gonna pretend we did that one. Altimeter set. Now that means we need to get a hold of the ATIS for where we're at. And I could look at the frequency on the Sky Vector page, actually, but save a little time. We're just going to cheat and go into the air traffic control, which off this menu is the tower, but I have it on a button on my keyboard. So, ATIS. Indianapolis ATIS is 134.25. We're just going to click it and put it in.
Indianapolis Airport information.
And here we go.
2300 Zulu. Wind calm.
Wind calm
Visibility
again.
9er. Sky
It's
conditions
really 9
clear.
again.
Temperature
Oh,
15.
did I not turn the Hold on a
Altimeter
second.
29.
Is the weather not set to live? I thought I set the weather to live. Yeah, look at that. It's not set to live. Live weather. Well, my apologies. I was wrong. Now let's listen. Oh, wow, it got darker. Oh, yeah, it's a little cloudier. Check that out. Now we ought to get a different story.
Indianapolis Airport information X-ray 2300
Yeah,
Zulu.
wind is at 295
Wind
at
295
9
at 9er.
9 knots.
Visibility 10.
Very nice.
Sky condition 10,100 feet scattered. Temperature 24.
Altimeter is 30.10, so we're going to change this.
ILS
All right.
runway 32 in use.
We got what we needed to that for now without getting too far off in the weeds. 3010. This is the setting I had on last time I flew the plane. I have it on a knob on my hardware, but I'll show you. It's where this says baro. It's for barometric pressure. This is how you change it. 3010. Now it's giving us accurate, or at least semi-accurate. What you call it? This is a backup steam gauge version of all of this, the attitude indicator. And then this is a backup altimeter that never seems to read the same as the altimeter in the G1000. 3010 is way up here, right? Let's see, it's saying 740 feet, and that says 780 feet. So yeah, they're never the same, but close enough for us. Okay, we got the altimeters set. Check. Standby horizon. I already made sure that it was good to go. Standby horizon check. Transponder. We touched on this last time. I'm going to put it off again. We're going to talk about the transponder at a later time. It's a squawk code that identifies to air traffic control basically who and what you are. But we're not going to get into it right now. We'll do that another time. So we'll say that's fine. Engine temperatures. We'll go back to the engine page. Yeah, everything's in the green. Everything's hunky-dory. Oil pressure is coming up yellow because the engines are just at idle, so it's a little low on the oil pressure. Engine temperature is good. Parking brake released. Not supposed to go over 50% power until the engines are warmed up. Well, they are, so no big deal. During taxi, you're supposed to check, make sure the brakes work. Check the nose wheel steering, make sure it's steering. Check all the flight instruments, which is to say, make sure everything is when you're turning and stuff like that, is the corresponding movements are showing up on your instruments. Check flight instruments. Go to next checklist, which is going to be for the run-up. So we're going to go back to the page here because it gives you a handy-dandy map of the airport. I think we're not going to go with the ATC for takeoff. I'm going to go ahead and get us in the air without, with us just pretending that we got clearance to taxi and then clearance to take off. But we're going to go right over here and hit runway 23 and skedaddle. So looks like nobody's in the way, and we're going to head out over there. All right. So, I guess we might as well go ahead and put the flaps up now. Yep. Make sure the flaps come up okay. Looking good. All right. Releasing the parking brake. How is that switch just popped up down there? And now I'm going to give just the right engine some power to assist me in making a hard left-hand turn here. And now, typically I've found with this plane you don't want to go much higher than 7 or 8% power on the load percentage indicators here. Otherwise, the plane will mistake taxiing for an attempted takeoff. It'll just start going pretty fast in a pretty big hurry. I never did really test the brakes. Look at me. Oh yeah, see, that seemed fine. Brakes are fine. Heading down this big taxiway. Nothing coming. Ooh, look at that. Bring it back down, the engine percentage. And these big airports, it's pretty hilarious when you ask for clearance to taxi because it just it sounds like a bunch of gibberish, all the taxiways with letters and, you know, you're crossing this runway and that runway, and it's just, it's a lot. But it's nice with the G1000 to have a little map here. Alright, I think we're going to hit this first entrance to the runway. We don't need to go and use absolutely every foot of the runway because this runway here is long. Okay, back the throttles back off to idle. And here we are. Got 2, 3 right. Now I'm going to engage the parking brake again. And since I don't need this map for navigating the taxiways anymore, we're going to go ahead and run it out a little more where I want it for takeoff. And then we're going to hit the checklist again. Okay, I engage the parking brake. Still virtually wearing our seatbelts. Our backrests are in the normal spot because we can't really adjust them in the simulator. Rear door is still closed. Front canopy still closed. The baggage doors won't open. Door warning light is out. It would be over here. Circuit breakers are all in. Some other planes with circuit breakers have like a red or yellow band under these, and this one doesn't, so it's a little harder to tell. I usually scoot over here and try and really look at them from the side and make sure all of them are in, because it's possible for them to pop out. Okay. Let's see, circuit breakers are in. Electric trim. Oh yeah, again we're messing with the trim. This is where I'm supposed to test this switch here, which I have mapped to some hardware. We're supposed to make sure that that switch actually moves the trim, and it does. So, yep, honky dory. Check. Fuel selectors. Now we switch them from cross feed back to on. Yeah, I guess it's okay. Like I said, I was thinking I did switch them back after the test, but I switch them back when the checklist mentions it again, because otherwise I'm going to take off on crossfeed. You know, it's not the end of the world. But rotor trim is centered. We didn't mess with that. Flaps for normal takeoff, they're up. For short field, it's one notch, and this is not a short field. Flight controls, you're supposed to check them again to make sure that they're moving, but we're going to skip that to save some time. Power levels are idle. Gotta double check they're at idle, or the run-up test won't work right. MFD, you're supposed to go back to the engine page, and then you're supposed to make sure the temperatures are all up before you do the ECU test, which is the diamond version of a run-up. Run-up is a test for the engines and the propellers that you normally do manually, but this plane is very new and very modern, and it does the test automatically. You just sit here holding buttons down. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. And you're also supposed to test the voter switches. So we're going to start doing all that right now. So let's switch back to the engine page. Okay. These planes, these diamond planes, have what's called a FADEC system, which is full authority digital engine control. It's all computerized like your car, or, you know, assuming you don't have a vintage car. All computerized like your car, where the computer takes care of everything to do with the engines and with the propeller angle. I know we have not talked about propellers with adjustable, you know, angle blades. We'll get into that when we actually have manual control of it, because we do not have not much manual control of it in this plane. The first thing we're going to test is the computers. Both engines have 2 computers. It's basically, you know, for, you know, double indemnity. You know what I mean? It's not exactly a backup. It's not running on one with the other as a backup. It's on auto at the moment. Here, I'll get down closer to these switches. Left-hand engine, right-hand engine. ECU A, ECU B, but they're in the center auto switch. So there's a computer deciding which of the two computers to use. What we do here is we switch both of them to one of the computers, and then we look back at the engine page and make sure that both engines stay running and everything is cool. And then we check the B computer on both engines, and again, that switch is tiny from here. And then again, we make sure everything stays running as hunky-dory, and then we switch back to the center auto position. So that's the checking the voter switches that the checklist was talking about. Voter switches, A auto, B auto. So check. And now ECU test. This is the run-up thing. These are the ECU test buttons. Since I have a mouse, I can't hold both buttons down at the same time. You could run each engine test individually, and maybe in real life people do run them individually. Maybe some people do. I guess a lot of people run them both at the same time using 2 fingers. Cows, the developer of this plane here, let me show you. Cows. Anyway, Cows was nice enough to make a secret click spot between the 2 switches that you can hold both of them down simultaneously. I usually hold the brake pedals down, not that the brakes probably the parking brake won't hold, but I don't know, it just feels safer. I hold the brake pedals down, hold both buttons down, and I get this it's saying ECU fail and everything. It's revving up the engines, it's making sure the engines are working like they're supposed to. It's changing the pitch on the props, the variable pitch props. It tests one computer that way on both engines, and then it tests the other computer the whole time I'm holding the mouse button down. I'm not entirely sure that I have to hold it down, but I think I've let it go before the test has stopped prematurely. So I just hold it down until it decides it's done. And that's probably going to be right about now. Yep, all done. So engines and propellers are all fine. So that was the run-up. Go back to the ECU test perform. Did pitot heat. Once you turn it on now, I'll turn it on now so I don't forget. Pitot heat's down here, but I got it on a physical switch. So pitot heat, like I said, we'll talk about what that is at another time. Ice protection, we don't care about. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, so the pitot heat, that's pitot and stall warning heat. But the stall warning heat, to protect itself from overheating, doesn't come on until the weight comes off the landing gear, so you end up getting this alarm that the stall heat isn't working, that it's failed. It's strange, but it'll go away as soon as we lift off. So transponder, like I said, we'll talk about the why and how on that on another time. But I'm supposed to switch it to altitude reporting right now, so I did that. Fuel pumps are on. We already checked that. MFD, you're supposed to go to the engine page during takeoff, which makes sense. And then the lineup procedure. Wow, just taking off might be a whole video on its own with this plane. Lineup procedure, landing light on. I'm going to do that with my physical switch right now. So now all 4 of my lights are on. You make sure the approach is clear, the runway's identified. This is available power check. I've seen people do this a couple of different ways, but if I read it correctly, I'm supposed to get out and line up on the runway, hold the brakes, run my engines up full throttle, and make sure that they maintain power for 10 seconds. And that's a variable amount of load depending on the temperature outside. That's how I read it. I've seen videos where people are doing it different ways, but that's how I read this. So that's how I've been doing it. Anyway, we're going to go down through that, and then we got to look at this once we lift off the normal climb. At 500, well, you're supposed to gear up as soon as you have a positive rate of climb and you don't have enough runway left to re-land if there's a problem. The flaps are supposed to be, up about the same time, or like 500 feet above the ground, AGL. But we're not using flaps, so it doesn't matter. The fuel pumps, oh yeah, I misread that earlier. The fuel pumps are supposed to be on for takeoff. I'll turn them on in a second. Yeah, it wasn't the fuel. Wasn't the? I was thinking fuel switches when I read fuel pumps in the previous checklist. That's what happens when you're splitting your focus, I guess. So I'll turn the fuel pumps on in a minute. Climb power set, which means once you're, I read this somewhere, when you're 500 feet off the ground, you can turn the fuel pumps off. You can pull the power back to I think it's 91 or 92%. I usually just pull it back to 90%, and that's climb power. You make sure the alternate air is closed. Alternate air is a whole other subject we'll get into some other time, but there's open, there's closed. And you're supposed to turn the landing lights off and all that hoo-ha. So we're going to switch back to the engine page for takeoff. I'm going to release the parking brake. I'm going to give it a little throttle to get us moving. I already got the pitot heat on. I'm going to use my physical switches to turn on both fuel pumps. Let's see, trim's still in the right place. Fuel selector's in the right place. There's no traffic. In real life, we'd be getting run over by a big jet airplane at this point in time. Okay, back in the throttle, back off, because we're going to do that power test. I don't really hold the brakes, with the engines at full power for 10 seconds. That just feels excessive. But I hold it for a few seconds, and I watch the gauges on the engine page over there and make sure everything seems stable. And everything seems stable, so I'm releasing the brakes and started pulling to the right, which is a little bit unusual. I must have a slight crosswind there. Yeah, she said 295, so yeah, I guess we would have a crosswind. Usually if there's no wind, she'd pull to the left. Oh, and there we go. See, it just floats away from the runway. Gosh, there's a lot of runway that I could still land on, but we've got a positive rate of climb, so I'm going to tap the brakes, raise the landing gear with my physical switch. Let's see, where we're at around... Not sure what that was, but we're at around 750 feet, so at 250 feet, we're going to do a number of things. We're going to back the throttle off, turn the fuel pumps off, and turn on to course. Oh. Okay, now I'm back off to... Oh, I overdid it. Okay, we got about 90. Turning the fuel pumps off. I'm going to start turning on to course, and we're going to switch back to the... map. Yeah, the course is totally the other way around. Okay, that beeping is not important at all. I know it seems a little insistent, but it's meaningless to us at this point. It has to do with if you're making an instrument approach to that runway. There's markers that let you know how close you are to the runway, and we're happening to be, in the neighborhood of one of those radio markers. So it's letting us know. But we're leaving the runway, so we don't care too much about that. Okay, I should probably get on with this turn a little faster. Let's see, my flaps are up, my gear's up. I could turn off my landing lights and taxi lights, and I started to overdo the bank and the turn. This will do for now. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my autopilot so I can focus more on what we're talking about and stuff. Okay, so autopilot on. Vertical speed right now is 800 feet per minute. That's a little aggressive, so we're going to nose down. We'll leave it at 700 feet per minute. I'm going to recenter my heading indicator or heading bug, I'm sorry, and switch it to heading mode so that I can steer us over towards the magenta line, everyone's favorite line. I don't want to entirely cross over the runway, so we're just going to kind of gently make our way over to the magenta line. Alright, was there anything else we were supposed to do after takeoff? Let's get the checklist again. Gear up, flaps up, fuel pumps off, climb power set, alternator's been closed the whole time, landing lights off. Nope, that sounds about right. So we're gonna check all of that and go to the next one, which the next one is descent, so obviously gonna be a while before we need that one. So I'm going to bring up the flight plan page so we can watch the miles tick down between each waypoint. And we'll even zoom that out a bit. And we are on our way. I think I'm going to have to leave it there at the moment. Actually, the last time I was editing stuff out, which I think was inputting the waypoints, I had a phone call, and something I'm going to have to go take care of. So I'm going to pause this, or I'm going to pause the recording, and I'm going to pause the simulator, and we'll come back to it later. I should note what time it says it is, though. This would be, it'll show the local time. Local time, 7:43 p.m. Yeah, you know, that's kind of later than I wanted to start this flight. That's all right. I like to use the real world weather, but I'm a little more pragmatic about the changing the time. So yeah, we might resume this flight at a later time, and it'll be at a later time in real life, and we'll make it an earlier time virtually. And we could talk about night flying and why I'm not doing much of it another time. But yeah, we'll go ahead and leave this here for now, and prepare your ears, because I'm going to go to an external shot. As a matter of fact, I'm going to pause the recording for a second and make sure the drone camera is a little further from the plane. Stand by. Yeah, don't know if you can hear me now, but I'll turn the simulator volume way down. Yeah, there she is. Yeah, I think that's an attractive plane. But we'll come back to this flight in a part 2 at this point. Get back inside and turn the volume back up where I had it. All right, guys. I'll go ahead and sign off, and we'll see you in part 2.